Bishop Park, members of the cabinet, colleagues, friends, and family. It's so good to be here today. Thank you for coming to celebrate this day and this time. Everyone has a story. We all have stories about our lives. We have stories about our experiences. We have stories about our faith. And we all travel on different roads and in different ways in order to accumulate all of the stories that make up our lives. Things can happen to us and to others that bring us great joy and celebration and just bring out that thanksgiving and praise. And then other things can happen that just make us feel spiritually depleted and weak. So many things in our individual lives and the lives of others, in world situations, can make our hearts heavy. Even as we gather here this afternoon, there are those of you that are celebrating life. And there are those of you that are feeling so overwhelmed you'll wonder how you're going to make it through another day. My life has been like most of yours, a series of ups and downs and highs and lows and celebrations and sadness. And I know I certainly prefer to remember the good things rather than the times of brokenness and pain. And that's especially true in the life of faith, isn't it? It's much easier to focus on the good parts of faith, God's love for us, God's desire for our well-being, the hope we find in God. But faith doesn't involve only the good parts. I think faith asks us to engage the hard things too. Things like suffering and sin and death and poverty and domestic violence and human trafficking and corporate corruption and climate change and hunger and, well, the list can go on and on and on. When we look at our world, we see a world that's broken in so many places. We see systems and institutions that are broken. We look at our lives and the lives of so many around us, and we see pain. We see hurt. So I believe that faith not only invites us to remember the good promises of God for our lives and for the world, but also dares us to take those good promises that we know so well, and not just know them, but use them and act upon them to bring healing and restoration and transformation and resurrection. We might have to look at those ugly, hard things a long time before it happens. But eventually, if we continue to engage not just in the good, but in the hard parts too, I believe we'll see lives that are changed. Systems and institutions, and yes, the world transformed, and hope restored. So how do we do this? How do we engage the things that are painful and share those promises that we know all too well in the midst of the pain? Well, we begin with Jesus. We begin with Jesus. Sounds pretty simple to us gathered here, doesn't it? We begin with Jesus. Now you might be thinking, this is your installation message, Judy. Couldn't you come up with anything more profound? But that's with Jesus. And it's where I had to begin, to engage the sin and the pain and the hurt, and to begin that process of healing and transformation. And it started with a simple prayer, and I remember the words like I prayed them yesterday, and actually maybe I did again. My prayer was simply, I can't do this alone. There's got to be something or someone bigger than me out there. So God, if you're there, I need your help. I need you. And in that moment, with that prayer, I began my personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I had known who Jesus was. But it was at that moment that I finally accepted the mercy and grace of Jesus and made room for Jesus to make room and live in my heart. And my life has never been the same. I'm not perfect by any means. But my life has never been the same. And my call and my journey in ministry, I termed that a whirlwind. Because when Jesus got a hold of me, or maybe I should say when I got a hold of Jesus, there wasn't any stopping what he was going to do in my life. You see, Jesus could see in my life what I couldn't. He could see something beautiful, even in the midst of pain. Friends, it all begins with who?
Jesus.
It all begins with Jesus. And that's why we have to engage in those hard things, in the painful and broken places of the world, because we have a story to share. And it's a story of hope. And it's a story of healing. And it's a story of transformation. And it's a story of resurrection. And it all begins with
Jesus.
Bartimaeus' story begins with Jesus. It says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. As the disciples were leaving Jericho along with a large crowd, Bartimaeus called from the side of the road. And in turning to see who was calling out, the crowd saw a blind beggar, certainly in their minds unworthy of Jesus' attention. So some even ordered Bartimaeus to be quiet, but he cried out even more, Son of David, have mercy on me. He was persistent. This was the opportunity of his life, so in spite of what some were telling him, he calls out. And Jesus hears him. But then, Jesus did something quite odd. Jesus doesn't answer Bartimaeus directly. Jesus doesn't go to him. Jesus tells the people to call Bartimaeus. So they called to the blind man and they said, on your feet, he's calling you. So Bartimaeus threw off his cloak, jumped to his feet, and went to Jesus. Jesus said, what do you want me to do for you? Bartimaeus said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, Jesus said, your faith has healed you. And immediately Bartimaeus received his sight. And I think this is an important part, and followed Jesus along the road. Now I'm going to guess that Bartimaeus' life was never the same. Healed, his dignity restored, and able to follow Jesus. Now, there are a couple of ways that Bartimaeus' story could have gone, and maybe you've thought about this, but Bartimaeus could have been silenced. He could have been intimidated by the crowd. He could have lived side of the road. And how often do we sometimes feel like we're required to keep silent? How often are we asked to keep our voices down, lest there be some offense that might cause a disruption? Or how often do we silence others, convinced that their cries for mercy aren't worthy of God's attention? We keep silent. We urge others to do the same. But not Bartimaeus. His persistent cries brought healing and hope to his life. And I wondered how many others along the roadside that may have been watching his story unfold. Bartimaeus' story could have gone yet another way. The people could have refused to call Bartimaeus to Jesus. I mean, why should Jesus waste his time on a blind beggar? Would Jesus have gone to him? We don't know. But I suspect so, because Jesus often works around those who are unwilling. But what Jesus asks of the crowd is a lesson for us all. Jesus says to the crowd, call him. You call him. You act on what you see. Do you see what Jesus did there? Jesus empowered the people to have a life-giving part in Bartimaeus' story. He wanted them to be involved. I think Jesus wanted them to see what he could see, the possibilities of healing and of hope for this man's life. You call him. You call him. Because I see him, and I want you to see him too. And I want you to see the rest of his story. I want you to see what happens when Bartimaeus comes to me and follows me. As the crowd gathered here this evening, and as we gather at different times across the connection, I think Jesus wants us to see the pain in the world, to see the brokenness, to see the hard parts. And Jesus invites us to call others to him. Jesus invites us to enter their stories and calls us to share the good promises and our faith, and calls us to be part of his life-giving work of bringing restoration, transformation, and hope to the world. And how do we answer this call? Quite simply, we begin with Jesus. Amen. Let us pray. Holy One, we do believe that your love extends to the whole world, to every person and to every situation. We believe that you are everywhere present, working with all creation for its redemption. Help us to see, God. Help us to see with open eyes and open hearts. Help us to see the broken places of the world, the pain and the hurt that is felt around the world. And then, Lord, help us to see the possibilities, to see the beauty that can come from the ashes. And above all, Lord Jesus, help us to enter into the life-giving work you call us to do in your name.